At the edge of a small town in Indiana sat the Maple Oak Inn, a run-down roadside motel with flickering neon lights and peeling paint. It was the kind of place travelers stopped at for a night and forgot by morning. But for Ethan and Claire Woods, it became their entire world and the sight of something no one in town would ever forget. They checked in on a cold February night. The manager, an old man named Harold, remembered them clearly, a young couple in their early 30s, polite, well-dressed, with an expensive car. They didn't look like the kind of people who stayed at cheap motels, but they'd asked for room 6 specifically. Harold thought that was strange. Nobody asked for room 6. That room hadn't been used much since the previous tenant, a trucker, had taken his life there the year before. Still, money was money. He handed them the key. "Enjoy your stay," he said. Ethan smiled, but his eyes were cold to cold. Claire just looked tired. For the first few days, everything seemed fine. Guests heard laughter, saw them sitting together outside smoking. But soon, that laughter turned into shouting. It started small muffled arguments late at night, then escalated. Housekeepers reported finding wine bottles smashed in the trash, the sheets torn, and bruises on Claire's arms when she'd come out to get ice. She always had an excuse. "I fell," she'd say. "It's nothing." But it wasn't nothing. Everyone in that motel knew something dark was brewing behind the thin walls of room 6. Ethan was a successful car dealer, the kind who charmed everyone in the room, then made you feel small once he had what he wanted. Claire had met him at 19. He swept her off her feet: trips, gifts, love letters. But what began as love turned into possession. He isolated her from friends, monitored her phone, and convinced her she couldn't survive without him. By the time they arrived at Maple Oak, Claire wasn't a wife anymore, she was a prisoner. She'd left him once before, stayed with her sister in Chicago. But Ethan found her, showed up with flowers, tears in his eyes, promising therapy, change, redemption. "This time will be different," he said. And she believed him. So they took a road trip to start fresh. Indiana was supposed to be a new beginning. Instead, it became the end. On the 5th night, Harold heard shouting louder than ever before. He walked up the creaky steps and knocked on the door. "Everything okay in there?" Silence. Then a calm voice, Ethan's. "Yeah, just a disagreement." "Sorry, sir." But something in that tone chilled Harold to his core. He thought about calling the police, but he didn't. He told himself it wasn't his business. That choice would haunt him forever. The next morning, guests saw Ethan alone at breakfast. Calm, quiet, reading a newspaper. He checked out at 9:47 a.m., left the key on the counter, and drove off. When housekeeping entered room 6 an hour later, they screamed. Claire's body lay on the floor beside the bed, bruises along her neck. Her hand still clutched her phone, screen cracked, showing a half-dialed number 911. The police were called immediately. The crime scene was brutal, but methodical. There were signs of a struggle, but also signs of control. The mirror cleaned, bed remade, even the curtains drawn neatly shut. Ethan had taken her jewelry, her ID, and her wedding ring. But he left one thing behind: a note on the nightstand. "Love ends when you stop listening." For 3 days, Ethan was nowhere to be found. Then, on the 4th day, a highway patrolman spotted his car abandoned near the Ohio border. Inside, police found his phone, his wallet, and a bottle of sleeping pills empty. Everyone assumed he'd taken his own life. The case was closed as a murder-suicide, and room 6 was sealed off. No one wanted to rent it after that. But 2 weeks later, something strange happened. Harold, the motel manager, began receiving calls: static, faint breathing, then silence. The caller ID showed no number. The front desk phone would ring at 2:13 a.m. every night, and always the sound of a woman whispering, "Don't forget me." At first, he thought it was a prank. Until one night, a guest in room 7 knocked on his door, pale and shaking. "There's someone crying next door," she said. "But I thought no one stayed in room 6 anymore." Harold checked the log. Room 6 was vacant. The door was locked. The key hadn't been touched. When he opened the door, the room was dark, but the lamp beside the bed was still warm. And written on the fogged-up mirror were 3 words: "I still love you." Police reopened the case after that discovery. Ethan's body was never found. Some believe he escaped, living under a new identity somewhere far away. Others say his guilt drove him to the river, and that the sounds people hear from room 6 are just echoes of a tragedy replaying itself. But one thing's certain: love, when poisoned by control, doesn't die quietly. To this day, the Maple Oak Inn remains open, though room 6 is permanently closed. A single rose still sits on the windowsill, placed there every February 14th by a woman no one ever sees come or go.